Everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys I'm going to be profiling for you one of the most powerful and probably the most expensive decks in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and that is the 2008 Tele-DAD deck. Yes, Tele-DAD. Now I want to give you a little bit of history on this deck and just how I came to build this deck and everything. So there's different versions of Tele-DAD you could play back in the day. It's hard to imagine, but this deck is almost 10 years old. It came out in, if my mind does not deceive me, that is, because it happened a long time ago, because it's 10 years old almost. In this deck is based off, this one exactly is based off the fall 2008 ban list and prior to the emergency ban list. So I believe that was November and December of 2008, I think. I never got to play this deck back in the day. It was way out of my freaking price range. I did get to play with the deck in real life recently over the last year and a half. I did profile this deck on the channel over a year and a half ago, but I have changed some things around for that format. But I did get to play it back in the day on my little 5DS card. So this came out in fall 2008, I remember, and I got to play this. This is Stardust Accelerator 2009. You can play Tele-DAD on this. So if you have an old DS and whatnot and you find this game, you can actually play Tele-DAD. With the computer and everything. So that's how I got to play it, but I've taken it to players, you know, that played more upper echelon stuff back in that time frame. I was in high school at the time. The game had gotten way too expensive compared to what I did. I didn't have the money, so I pretty much played Black Wings and other decks of that nature back then. I mean, all the different decks from that era were very expensive. Glads were expensive, Light Swarm were expensive, DAD was expensive. Black Wings were the cheaper option, pretty much, so that's what I went with back then, with Royal Oppression. Royal Oppression Black Wings, and Royal Oppression Gadgets, actually. Those were the two decks I played back then, doing this little era. But pretty much, there's different versions of the deck you can play. You have DAD, or Tele-DAD, which uses more synchro and uses the hero engine and some of the zombie engine. Then you have the zombie DAD, which was pretty much more focused on Mizukis and Zombie Master and things of that nature, if I remember correctly. And then you also had, prior to this format, you had another format which was using Dark Arm Dragon, which was called, and used more the hero engine, that is, a format called DAD Return, which got pretty much DMOC banned. But then after that, you had the Synchros come out, and then you had Tele-DAD. So that was at the end of the GX era. DAD Return was. Tele-DAD was in the early Synchro era. But yeah, without further ado, guys, I'll get started. It's a very fun deck to play. It's very combo oriented, and I'm sorry I took up 3 minutes of your time, but I wanted to give a history on this deck before I profiled it. So first off, we have our two Dark Arm Dragon. Dark Arm Dragon in this deck is freaking the boss monster. It's the namesake of the format, pretty much. Dark Arm Dragon in this deck is so easy to drop. You have so much graveyard manipulation to set up for your darks and grave to drop the DAD, and DAD can just clear a board on himself. You special summon the DAD, they may have 3 or 4 cards. You'd be like, okay, banish dark from grave, pop, banish dark from grave, pop, banish dark from grave, pop. You just can clear their board so easily. It's ridiculous. So two Dark Arm Dragon. I need to get this deck more hollowed out, but I haven't got a chance to yet. Next, I got 3 Destiny Hero Malicious. This card is your rank 8 Synchro Summon Maker, or I guess you say your level 8 Synchro Summon Maker. It helps you onto your level 8 Synchros. So your Stardust Dragon, your Colossal Fighter, your Red Dragon Archfiend if you want to, your Thought Ruler Archfiend, and things of that nature. That's what Destiny Hero Malicious helps you do. It helps you do it through Plague Spreader and Krebons, which we'll talk about later. And also, he is a crush card target, which is really nice. And sometimes you contribute him off to get Chaos, a little tech I run in the deck, which you contribute him off to get a Caius out on the field, which is kind of nice. Which was something people ran back in the day, I know. I did have the unfortunate thing, I didn't get to play against him, but I saw the match. There was a guy at my regionals back in this era, and he had Crush Card Virus at the regionals, and everybody just hated that guy because it was an expensive card back in that time. Next we have your 2 Plex Spreader Zombie. Very, very broken-esque card. You definitely know that if you play Plague Spreader Zombie. But in this time frame, it was also a crush card target, so you could literally bring it back, flip the crush card virus, nuke their hand sometimes. You know, you get the advantage of seeing their hand and what they're drawing, which is really nice. But along with Malicious, he helps you go for your Stardust Dragon, which back then was considered a very broken card and even ban-worthy or limit-worthy or something. I mean, this is the same time frame where we're talking about Black Rose Dragon was put to 1 later on. So, yeah, for nuking the field too much. Sounds like Exciton Knight, doesn't it? But yeah, you got this. Pretty much is how you work with that. Plague Spreader can also help, depending upon your hand and field. He can also help you go for your Goyo Guardians too, with your level 4 monsters on the field. So simple play, which we'll talk about now in a second, with Plague Spreader is with your Armageddon Knight. With Armageddon Knight, if you already had maybe a different play you wanted to do, but you could sometimes send the Mally, which was a thing you did. Or if you wanted to go for a synchro play that turn, you just send the Plague Spreader Zombie first turn. If you were going second, activate Plague Spreader's effect, stack a card on your top of your deck, bring back the Plague Spreader, and go for Mr. Broken himself back then, Goyo Guardian. So that's how you would go for a Goyo play. It was very, very easy, and it was a very good turn 2 play if your opponent already had a board set up. And Armageddon Knight was searchable through Rhoda. You also ran another card called Dark Digrapher, which was originally played in Dad Return format. A very, very, very powerful card. Pretty much, he helps you get dead cards out of your hand. So if you had a Malicious in hand, you could pitch a Malicious, and if you had a Plague Spreader in hand, you send the Plague Spreader to grave, and then you could set up for a level 6 synchro play, and maybe even a level 8 synchro play, depending upon your hand. So very, very good card. These were pretty much your 2 dumpers in the deck for dumping things to the graveyard and setting up for combo plays, as well as setting up for dropping the Dark Arm Dragon as well. So these guys set up your graveyard. Dark Grepher and Armageddon Knight. I had that Armageddon Knight for years though. That's an original one. Used to use it for different decks back then. Next you have your Necro Gardna. Necro Gardna, it pretty much gives you protection. It's another thing to drop. It's another dark target. You can send it to the graveyard so to give you some battle protection, because it's kind of like, you know, it stops things when they try to attack you. You can banish it, and the fact that you can banish it means that you could, if you had maybe too many darks in grave, you could just banish it if they tried to attack you, and then you would have maybe have 3 darks in grave. Then drop the dad. There you go. That's what I'm trying to say here, guys. You have very easily ways to manipulate your graveyard through using things like Destiny Hero Malicious effect to banish, get him out of the grave, but still get pluses off it by making a synchro play. So yeah, 1 Necro Gardna. Next you run for your hero monsters, your Stratos, which was broken back then, especially if you got it off Monster Reborn after you used it. Oh my gosh. And then Dark Doom Lord. He was pretty much something that helped you get around problematic cards. You could go, he was easily searchable, so you could go Doom Lord. That monster's annoying, let me banish that for now. And then if you have maybe an E-Tele, you could synchro up with Doom Lord and go for a synchro play even. So he still had versatile effects by banishing things and going for synchro plays. You couldn't attack that turn, but it helped get around problematic things that you just couldn't deal with right then. And Stratos was a searcher for the deck, and if you had Destiny, Destiny Draw in your hand, you could search the Malicious, pitch the Malicious with Destiny Draw, and get another plus off your hand. Draw 2 cards. Basic things like that, basic combos in the deck. Next you have probably one of the best standalone monsters ever in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That was played forever and was at one of forever, and that's Breaker, the Magical Warrior. Nothing more needs to be said. You could go Breaker, break back row, get a Plague Spreader. Maybe if you had a Plague Spreader engraved, go for a level 6 synchro play. E-Tele, go for a Krebons, go for a level 6 synchro play, and you also popped a back row. So benefits, benefits, benefits. Then you have the 1 Sangan, which it's Sangan and helps search out all your different combo pieces, and he could also help you go for synchro plays along with E-Tele and Krebons. Or not Krebons and so much, but also you could use Krebons, but you also could use what's his name, Psychic Commander. So Sangan, very good. Then you had the 1 Caius. You could pitch it with Allure of Darkness if it was dead in your hand, but it was also good because you could tribute off maybe a Plague Spreader or a where is it? A Malicious, and you could, if you had not a great hand, you could go bring back from the graveyard, tribute off with Caius, have a big monster that could banish things. Pretty nice, and Caius is a great card. So that was one thing you could do. Next you have for your Psychics, your 2 Krebons, and your 1 Tank Commander. Some people run 3 Krebons. I prefer the Tank Commander because it gave me versatility and Tank Command and Psychic Commander, excuse me, not Tank Commander. I always called him Tank Commander because he's in like a little psychic tank. If you really look at it like a tank, he looks like a guy in World War II with his hat and everything, but a robot. So Psychic Commander was a pretty good card on its own, really, as a stand-up card that could get over things. And Krebons just helped, we could stall out on his own, but also they were all E-Tele targets as well. So there's your E-Tele targets. Then you had your 3 Allure of Darkness, which was really broken. Then you had your 3 Destiny Draw. Talk about consistency. We're not even halfway through the consistency of the deck. But your 3 Destiny Draw with your Mally. It could clog, but most of the time it was good. Next you had your 2 E-Tele and your 2 Rhoda. E-Tele with your E-Tele targets. Rhoda, and it was quick play, so that sometimes played into things. Depending upon, you know, maybe they were trying to attack you, you flip over the E-Tele Krebons, protect yourself. Sometimes that does happen. And Rhoda, searching out your warrior targets like Armageddon Knight, Dark Grepher, and your Stratos. So, and also you can search out your Doom Lord, or Dr. Doom as I call him. 1 MST, MST was that 1. 1 Brain Control, that was that 1. 1 Heavy Storm, that was that 1. And 1 Monster Reborn, because Monster Reborn was that 1. These were all 1-ofs in any deck back then because they were just that good, and pretty much MST was still at 1, so Breaker was still very viable. But you still had Heavy Storm at 1, so kind of your second big MST. Then you have one of the best cards, one of the cards I've always loved in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yet sometimes I don't know. You could debate if it was very skillful or whatnot, but as a 3-of back then, it was a very skillful card, I feel like, because you could literally, you had to wait and use it. But if you had double Solemn Judgment and a decent board, you usually won that game, I find. So it was a broken card, though, I will say that. But I feel like if you, depend upon when you activated it, that was kind of skillful. But 3 Solemn Judgment, it was at 3 at the time. Very, very, very good card. It had been at 3 for ages, though. That was the funny thing. It had been at, this came out in Metal Raiders, and it was still at 3. Nobody played it back then because everybody thought it was junk. It wasn't until later on that people figured out it was a good card. Happens with many cards. Look at Vanity's Emptiness. Royal Oppression, it was at 3 of. I ran 2 of it in this build. Very, 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 very good card. I loved it in different decks back in the day. Royal Oppression Gadgets, Royal Oppression Black Rings, whatever. But you could definitely run it in Tele-DAD. After you set your board up, you flipped over the Royal Oppression, your opponent really can't do anything. Doesn't really matter. Especially if that backed up with a Solemn Judgment, my gosh. Then your 1-ofs, 1 Trap Dust Shoot, that was that 1. 1 Bottomless Trapple, it's okay. You have to remember that Priority was in effect back then, still. But Bottomless was still a decent card, especially if you're playing against a zombie, match. Then you had your 1 Crush Card Virus. Broken, OP, I never owned it back then, but I do have the rare version of it from back then with the original text. So yeah, your 1 Crush Card Virus. On to the extra deck, guys. So let's go on to the extra deck now. The extra deck was pretty staple. I had to go back and look at different things because the extra decks back then were played a little bit differently. They had 15 cards, standard like that, but you also have to keep in mind that there was different sets coming off at that time. I know Hidden Arsenal 1 wasn't out yet, but like in the DS game, Hidden Arsenal 1 was out, so you could play Brio and things of that nature, but you do have to keep that in mind. 3 Stardust Dragon. I mean, it was broken back then. I'm sorry. Stardust Dragon back in those days was very broken. Nowadays, not so much, but back in that time frame, it was an amazing godlike card. It gave you pretty much field protection. If you had that in a Solemn Judgment and a decent field, it was just amazing. So 3 Stardust Dragon, you need to run 3 in this deck. You will usually go between 2 and 3 a duel, literally. 2 Colossal Fighter. You could run just 1, but I always like running 2 because sometimes, depending upon the deck I was facing, it was really nice. If they had a 28 beater or something a little bit big, you use Colossal Fighter's effect, bring them back, ram into it again. And it's a good card for that time frame that was. Then One Red Dragon Archfiend. It's a very good card from back then. Decent card, came in handy. I like it. So your 1 Thought Ruler Archfiend. It's another level 8 target that sometimes you did go for. just depending upon situations, but he was decent, especially if you were able to go for a second synchro play. You either sometimes, depending upon the field, went for double Stardust or Ruler Archfiend, because Ruler Archfiend had more attack than Stardust. So that's the reason you run that. But his effect was very good too. 2 Goyo Guardian, you need to run 2 Goyo Guardian. You will make usually 1 to 2 Goyo Guardian per duel. Definitely, staple, you need 2 Goyo Guardian. Very, very good card. 1 Black Rose Dragon, blow up the field, nuke the world, beautiful card. Everybody loves Akiza. Next we have 1 Dark Strike Fighter. I think this card was out yet. I forget which set it came out in off the top of my head. I tried to look it up, but I don't have good internet connection right now. But 1 Dark Strike Fighter, you could easily throw everything down your opponent's throat, go Dark Strike Fighter, and just kill the world. Just end them there. For your another level 6 you run 1 Psychic Life Transfer. It's a decent card. It's not a bad card really for back then, for early synchro days, but you run 1 of it. It's a decent card to have. Then you have 1 Magical Android. You could make this. It was decent. It was okay. I like it. I've had that since I was a kid. Then you have the 2 cards I've had since I was a kid, because I did own some Plague Spreaders way back when I played zombies for a minute. You have your how you pronounce this card? Doom Kaiser Dragon, yes, and your Dark King Hadas. You have these 2 guys here. These will you were only able to make these if you had Plague Spreader Zombie and you had a certain play set up. It was usually played if you were playing against another zombie deck. So say you went Brain Control or Monster Reborn and brought their zombie back, and then you brought your Plague Spreader back and you did for different plays. That's what you would usually do. I did play it in the game because there was sometimes you run into zombie players just on the DS game really. So it was good to have an extra deck. And in real life back then, people did run these 2 because if you were playing against the zombies, which were very powerful at that time, very popular, and the zombie Dad deck was very popular, you could easily just bring your Plague Spreader out, Mind Control, Monster Reborn, whatever. Goyo Guardian. If your Goyo Guardian ran over their zombie and you brought it back to your side of the field, then you brought back your Plague Spreader, you could go for these 2 guys. So that's why you run them in the extra deck if you're just wondering. So that was from what I read in tournament reports and just reading articles from back then. But that is the deck, guys. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Oop, let me get that set up there. It's a very fun deck to play, really. It really is at the end of the day. It's very powerful. It's very fun to be nostalgic. I'm happy. I'm happy that format's over with. It was so long ago, even, but it left a very bad taste in my mouth. But it's a very powerful deck, and it's fun to go back and play with it, especially when you want to go play with buddies and just play Tele-DAD together. It's fun. When you're sick and tired of a format, sometimes to go back to an older format and just have some fun with it. So yeah, till next time, guys. Take care. Have fun dueling. Good luck dueling. I hope I explained everything well in this deck profile for you guys. I wanted to give you history and teach you some of the combo plays with this deck if you wanted to pick it up. And till next time, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling. And also, if you're wondering if you want to build this deck, the deck total probably costs 30 to 40 bucks to build if you want to. So very cheap to build, decent to play, and fun to play. Till next time, I'm Seto Kaiba. Take care, everybody.